this second Cyber Summit. No, thank you for participating or attending this summit to all the audience. No, in this session, we will review practical aspects of blood pressure measurement in the office or clinic, including standardized techniques recommended by the guidelines, and emphasis on the use of clinically validated devices, and recognition of common errors in blood pressure measurement. An accurate measurement based on standardized techniques will allow us to diagnose patients correctly and help us to manage hypertensive patients more effectively. Just to clarify, the term office BP refers to measurements done in the clinic, while out of office refers to measurements done outside the clinic. So this can either be the use of a special gadget measuring the 24-hour ambulatory BP, or it may be done at the patient's home or any other place like the local health center, barangay, company clinic, malls, etc. Current guidelines promote the use of out-of-office measurement as an adjunct to help confirm. Out-of-office BP also aids in the management of hypertension through patient empowerment. These recommendations are born out of recognition that not all office blood pressure measurements are equal, with some facilities using a standardized method, which will be discussed here, while others unfortunately use suboptimal approaches to office blood pressure measurements. The objectives are as follows. At the end of this session, participants should be able to 1. Accurately measure BP in a clinical setting, minimizing common errors. 2. Understand current diagnostic criteria and learn about the use of adjunct home and ambulatory blood pressure monitor. And 3. Initiate and adjust antihypertensive therapy based on current guidelines and patient-specific factors. I have no disclosures to make. A prerequisite of blood pressure measurement is that it must be measured using a device that has been clinically validated and confirmed to be accurate. For BP measurements in the office, it is recommended to follow a standardized method, as will be discussed in the next few slides. Okay, let me start by saying this. An accurate measurement of blood pressure leads to a correct diagnosis of hypertension. This is very important. Now, this infographic is found in the ISH 2020 guidelines and is the one being used by the 2020 Philippine Clinical Practice Guidelines. You have 4 variables: the patient, environment, equipment, and operator. The blood pressure should be measured with the patient seated comfortably after 5 minutes of rest. Patients should avoid exercising and using stimulants like caffeine or tobacco for at least 30 minutes before measurement. The patient's bladder should be emptied if needed. Patients should be seated with their legs uncrossed and feet flat on the floor with their back supported. The arms should also be supported on the table to avoid isometric exercise-induced increases in blood pressure. The upper arm should be bare of clothing where the cuff is to be applied. Rolling up the shirt sleeves should be avoided as this can result in a tourniquet effect. The mid-arm where the cuff is placed should be at the heart level. An appropriately sized cuff should be used because an undersized cuff will falsely elevate and an oversized cuff will falsely reduce blood pressure. The bladder length should be 75 to 100% of the arm circumference measured at the mid-bicep. Suffice to say, many modern cuffs nowadays include sizing indicators, so pay attention to that. Now, you have sizing indicators with minimum and maximum length. For those with significant obesity where a correctly fitting upper arm cuff is not available, measurement of the lower arm or wrist can be considered as an alternative. 3 blood pressure measurements should be taken each 1 to 2 minutes apart. Additional measurements can be done if readings differ by more than 10 millimeters mercury, like for example in patients with arrhythmia or white coat effects, and the average of the last 2 blood pressure readings should be recorded. This infographic is found in the 2024 ESC guidelines. Again, at initial visit, BP should be measured in both arms to detect inter-arm difference. If a difference is detected, further measurement in the original arm is indicated to ensure that the difference is consistent. If systolic blood pressure differs by more than 10 millimeters between arms, subsequent measurements are obtained using the arm with a higher blood pressure value. Significant inter-arm differences may reflect coarctation of the aorta or arterial stenosis, which requires additional investigation. Patients should be assessed for orthostatic hypotension at the initial visit, and if symptoms arise, especially in elderly individuals. Now, how do we do this orthostatic maneuver? After allowing the patient to rest for 5 minutes in the sitting or lying position, the patient is made to stand up, and the blood pressure is measured 1 minute and 3 minutes after standing. And the threshold for you to say that there's orthostatic hypotension if there's a drop of 20/10 or more systolic over diastolic blood pressure. It is also important to palpate the pulse to check for arrhythmia. The ESC recommends that blood pressure be checked via opportunistic screening. And if you look at the Philippine guidelines on periodic health examination, or PHEX, done by the group of Tony Duns a few years ago, they also gave a recommendation for opportunistic screening. And their statement is thus: among asymptomatic, apparently healthy adults, we recommend screening for hypertension. So regardless of chief complaint, the blood pressure of the patient should be checked at any when the opportunity arises. Now, opportunistic screening is typically performed using office BP and is key in detecting possible hypertension. As we all know, hypertension is a silent disease, such that you won't know unless you check the blood pressure. However, a single screening in the office alone is typically not sufficient to establish a diagnosis. We all know that the guidelines say you should check for another 2 to 3 times different days, if it's not emergency or urgency. Especially, in patients with values close to diagnostic thresholds, we should check for another time. Therefore, a single screening requires some form of repeat assessment to confirm the diagnosis, preferably out of office, so home, local health center, or ambulatory blood pressure, or if out of office measurement is not available, repeat office BP on follow-up. Now, when you do opportunistic screening in your patients, regardless of chief complaint, there are only 2 outcomes. One, the blood pressure is normal or non-elevated, as the ESC calls it now, and we give advice accordingly, or it can be elevated. Now, elevations of 140 to 159 over 90 to 99, okay, we can use out of office blood pressure to confirm the diagnosis. A screening office BP of 160, here 160 over 110 is almost always consistent with the diagnosis of hypertension, but a small proportion can have extreme white coat effects. So for example, 160 to 179 or over 100 to 109, prompt confirmation within 1 month should be done using either office or out of office blood pressure, as delays in treatment are associated with increased CVD event rates. For blood pressures more than or equal to 180 over 110, and if you look at the guidelines, this corresponds to severe hypertension, or stage 3 in the American guidelines, or grade 3 in the European guidelines. So we need to assess these patients for hypertensive emergency. In the setting of hypertensive emergency, immediately commencing BP lowering IV treatment is recommended. So, for example, you see we would like to distinguish between urgency and emergency. When you say urgency, BP 180 over 110 severely elevated without signs and symptoms, or if any, very, very mild, not referable to emergency elevation in blood pressure. These patients usually do not need admission, but may be admitted as needed or as the need arises. You just need to adjust the medications if they're already taking medications, and then tell them to come back within a week or 2. For emergency elevations in blood pressure, there are signs and symptoms of acute coronary syndrome, chest pains, heart failure, patients shortness of breath, dyspnea on exertion. There are signs of acute stroke, acute kidney injury, and these patients need to be admitted for BP lowering via IV medications. We do not recommend the use of sublingual medications nowadays. Now, I think we just came out with the new clinical practice guidelines for acute elevations in blood pressure, care of Raymond Oliva et al. So we'll watch out for that in the next episodes. We've been hearing about validated blood pressure monitors and also calibrated. What do we mean by this? If you look to the left, that's the world standard, your mercury manometer, no, which was outlawed and not for sale since June 13, 2022 in the Philippines, no, because of the mercury content. We now use the aneroid on top or the digital blood pressure automated or semi-automated below. For the aneroid, you need a stethoscope and you need proper training for the operator because you should be able to discern or distinguish the various Korotkov sounds for you to be able to provide an accurate blood pressure measurement. Digital blood pressure apparatuses, no, you just have to apply, the operator just needs to apply the cuff properly, paying attention to the middle of the rubber bladder so that you can center it on the brachial artery, and then just push the on button, and then the automated device will do the rest. Some fully automated devices actually check 3 times, no, and give the average. Now, if you want to check whether your blood pressure monitor is validated, you can look it up in this website, www.stridebp.org and www.validatebp.org. When you say validated, this is a one-time thing. You compare a new gadget to the old standard and make sure that it provides consistent readings, no, maraming readings. When we validate, we do 10 to 20 blood pressure readings using the new gadget and the old gadget, no. So that's just a one-time thing. It makes sure that it can provide consistent results comparable to the standard. While when you say calibration, it is done every 6 months in hospitals, no, to bring the gadget back to its standard, no, because wear and tear using it for 6 months will do some damage, no. So we need to calibrate to make sure that it is still up to standard. Common errors that we encounter in the clinics, no, for technique, failure to rest for 3 to 5 minutes, no, failure to take multiple measurements, no. Most of the time in the clinics we're in a hurry to see a lot of patients, no. Please take time, no, in taking the blood pressure, because this is very important. It is important to get an accurate measurement to get a correct diagnosis. Manual blood pressure, you can do too slow or too rapid cuff deflation, and this will affect your blood pressure reading. And then failure to check for palpatory BP. Patients with auscultatory gaps, no, you might say that the blood pressure is normal when in fact there's an auscultatory gap and the blood pressure should be higher, no. So usually you do this with manual blood pressure. You do palpatory before doing auscultatory blood pressure. With equipment, as I mentioned earlier, incorrect cuff size. If it's too small, blood pressure will be falsely elevated. If it's too large, the blood pressure will be falsely low. Then non-validated blood pressure apparatuses are very much available in online shopping apps, no. You can buy as low as 800, 700, or 500 pesos. But these non-validated blood pressure apparatuses, as I mentioned earlier, have never been checked against the standard, and they sometimes provide inconsistent results. So you can do misdiagnosis, say that the patient has no hypertension, when in fact the patient should be high, or you can say that the blood pressure is high when in fact it is not. Calibration is not regularly done. In automated blood pressure monitors are not recommended for use in patients with atrial fibrillation because it's an oscillatory type, no, it measures the oscillation. And then also it's not useful for extremes of blood pressure. Too low or too high blood pressures will give inconsistent results. However, there are models now that have come out where we can use the digital BP automated for patients with atrial fibrillation. So wrong cuff size leads to a misdiagnosis. I just listed down here the measurements, but measurements may differ according to the manufacturer. So you just pay attention to infant, child, small adult, adult, large adult, and thigh. So approximations, ito yung mga measurements which may differ. Now, for you to be able to learn how to measure the cuff size, you just need a tape measure and measure at the mid bicep, at the mid arm. Check the circumference in centimeters and multiply by 80%. So the ideal bladder length, the cuff, should be about 80% of the patient's arm. Now we go to the second portion of our talk, or our session, understanding current diagnostic criteria, also known as your clinical practice guidelines. Now, in cardiology, we always have updated guidelines, no? This is because we want to incorporate all the latest and the greatest and newer data coming in. So every 3 to 4 years, guidelines are updated. Let me give you an example, or let me share with you a brief history of the guidelines. The first systematic guideline for hypertension was published in 1977, the JNC-1. JNC stands for the Joint National Committee on Detection, Evaluation, and Treatment of High Blood Pressure. This was published in January 17, 1977. Subsequent years, they were able to come up with a total of 8 guidelines. But if you notice, no, from the JNC 1 to 3 from 1977 to 1984, just paid attention to the diastolic blood pressure. In 1988, JNC 4, they started using the definition 140/90 up to 2014, the JNC 8. No, it took a long time for the JNC 8 to come out, from 2003 to 2014. That's why we call it JNC late. And after this, a few 2 to 3 years after this, the JNC committee shifted to, or passed the burden to the American College of Cardiology, such that in 2017, the American College of Cardiology and the American Heart Association came out with a new definition, totally different from the previous definition, 130/80. That's why during the time, we kept saying 130 is the new 140. Now, if you attended Denver's first session, you'll know na these patients with when we lowered the definition to 130/80, of course the number of patients with hypertension will increase. However, it is not they do not need, most of them will not need medications, but just need advice or lifestyle change, and then confirmation. A year after the 2017 guidelines, the European guidelines came out with their own revision, still using the 140/90. So current diagnostic criteria, you have the 2025 American guidelines, the 2024 European Society of Cardiology, and actually, our bias, of course, is the 2020 Philippine Society of Hypertension, Philippine Heart Association Clinical Practice Guidelines. If you look at this table, in Asian countries, Mongolia and Taiwan followed the American Heart Association definition of 130/80, while the rest of Asia followed the 140/90 definition. So Philippines, office blood pressure 140/90, home BP 135/85. Average 24-hour BP monitoring is 130/80. Average daytime ambulatory BP is 135/85, and average nighttime BP of 120/70. Same as the Europeans. Now, if you attended this last February's annual convention of the Philippine Society of Hypertension, and if you were lucky enough to attend Dr. Alta Schutz's session, you could have heard her say there are too many different and often long and complex guidelines. The key word is actually to simplify. We need to simplify the guidelines. Look at this busy slide done by Denver, no? Very, very busy comparing the American guidelines, the European and the Philippine Society of Hypertension. For academic purposes, this is very good because the red ones signify high risk. The green ones, like the traffic light, it's go, it's okay. Pero for clinical use, medyo malilito tayo. So we need to simplify and choose which to follow. So we'll be following the 140/90. So the question now, because we have too many guidelines, what do we really need from the clinical practice guidelines? In the clinics, we need to define what is hypertension. We need a threshold for diagnosing patients, saying that this patient has hypertension. And we need the threshold for starting treatment. At what level should I start treatment? And when we say treatment, we do pharmacologic and non-pharmacologic measures. For prevention of cardiovascular disease, we are concerned with what target of blood pressure we should attain in the general population and in specific populations with comorbidities. And how do we achieve this target? So what medications should we use? Medications that are first line recommended by the guidelines. So ang natural bias namin nila Denver is the Philippine guidelines, but this was done in 2020. It's very short, very simple, easy to use, easy to apply in the clinics, easy to remember. Because sabi nga, what do you need? You need ano bang hypertension? Okay? For academic purposes, we should also look at the 2024 ESC guidelines. So yung mga more in-depth discussions nandito sa ESC guidelines. Sa Philippine Clinical Practice Guidelines, this was made using clinical questions. No? So maraming clinical questions and then they will answer, the panel will answer using data from literature na validated. So first of all, the first clinical question of the Philippine Clinical Practice Guidelines, what is the definition of hypertension? It's more than or equal to 140/90. Normal BP is less than 120/80. Pay attention to this, less than 120/80, because there will be a slight difference with the European Society guidelines. And anything in between is termed borderline hypertension. So very simple, very easy to remember. 140/90, mataas na yung blood pressure. Dapat less than 120 or less than 80. Pag hindi, that's borderline. So this is the ESC 2024 definition. Look, remember yung pinakita kong maraming graph kanina sa Asians, 140/90. At home, it's 135/85. Daytime blood pressure corresponds to your home blood pressure, 135/85. But the total average 24-hour BP is 130/80 and nighttime is 120/70. And yung elevated BP, previously termed borderline blood pressure or high normal blood pressure in previous guidelines, it's now called elevated, and it starts at 120/70. So sa atin, over 80. And then, yung term nila for normal or sa US guidelines, optimal blood pressure, na less than 120 over less than 70, sa atin less than 80. It's called non-elevated, no? It's not normal for them. Non-elevated. So yun lang ang parang difference. Now we go to out of office. When we see a patient in the clinics, now we check the blood pressure, it's elevated. Anong recommendation? We do out of office blood pressure monitoring. And there are two techniques now that you can use. You can do ambulatory blood pressure monitoring and home blood pressure monitoring. We'll compare the two and I'll show you the differences. Now, ano ba yung usefulness nilang dalawa? They are very useful to check for white coat hypertension and mask hypertension. Ano yun? White coat hypertension, the blood pressure is elevated in the clinic or in the office, but normal at home. So sa clinic, it's 140/90 and above. Pag sa bahay, less than 135/85 ang blood pressure niya. So that's white coat hypertension. Yung mask hypertension is baliktad. the blood pressure is elevated at home or in the office or at the job site or work site, pero patient sent to the clinic, pag chinek mo yung blood pressure, when you check the blood pressure, it is normal. So blood pressure outside, 135/85 and above. Blood pressure in the clinic, less than 140/90. Okay, so that is mask. Ano yung dalawang term? These are new terms that they introduced. White coat hypertension and mask hypertension patients are not yet receiving treatment for hypertension. When the patients are receiving treatment, nagmamonitor sa bahay, normal sa bahay, pagdating sa check-up sa clinic, tumataas yung blood pressure. You call that white coat effect. So this refers to elevation of blood pressure in the clinic in a patient who is already receiving treatment. Likewise, yung mask uncontrolled hypertension, uncontrolled sa bahay, uncontrolled sa clinic, sa workplace. Pero pagdating sa clinic, normal yung blood pressure. So between the two, white coat and mask hypertension, mas at risk yung mask hypertension. Okay, so the ESC infographics for home-based blood pressure measurement, they recommend the use of validated blood pressure device, measure in a quiet room, 5 minutes rest, arm and back supported, obtain 2 readings, 1 to 2 minutes apart. The reading should be done twice a day. So usually morning upon waking up, within 1 hour usually ang recommendation, pero upon waking up, ma-check na yung blood pressure. If the patient needs to go to the toilet, empty muna yung bladder before checking the blood pressure. Do not drink coffee or take breakfast. So first thing in the morning, check the blood pressure. In the evening, you check before dinner, no? So 2 times. Pero yung home blood pressure, as you can see, is static, no? Nakapahinga yung pasyente. And we need to average, no? You tell the patients to write it down in a notebook, small notebook or piece of paper, and not just tell you the values outright, no, sa clinic. Kasi kwento lang yun eh. But if you see the pattern, makikita nyo kung anong nangyayari doon sa blood pressure ng pasyente. Okay? So, make a BP diary. With regard to 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure, you again use a validated device. Okay? This device, no, is applied and then may recorder sa waist. Usually records the BP at 15 to 30 minutes intervals. And during the night, mga 30 to 60 minutes at night. And the minimum 70% usable kasi may mga blood pressure recordings that are not usable. So dapat 70% at least for you to be able to say na accurate yung result ng ambulatory BP. And then may diary, ano ba yung ginagawa ng pasyente at the time, no, intake of medications and sleep time should be completed. So sabi dito, pinakita dito that the patient's blood pressure can be checked during activity outside, inside, etc. So ang BP 130/80 pagka 24-hour 24-hour average, pagka daytime average 135/85, pag night times 120/70. Okay, so this is a comparison between your ambulatory and home blood pressure monitoring. Usually, dati pinaglalaban nila, no? They pit one against the other, no? But this should be complementary actually. So, ano yung advantages ng ambulatory BP? It can identify white coat and mask hypertension similar to your home blood pressure monitoring. But your ambulatory BP, because it is attached and the patient is able to walk around, can measure blood pressure. Naglalakad siya, punta siya sa mall, and then dumating yung time na mag-check, it can measure blood pressure in real-life settings and during usual activities. So, having said that, no, it has a stronger prognostic evidence kasi mas marami siyang blood pressure na nakukuha during rest and during activity. Ang main advantage ng ambulatory blood pressure is that it provides your nighttime readings during sleep blood pressure that you cannot do with home BP monitoring kasi kailangan gumising ka. Okay? So you get abundant information from a single investigation. Ang nakikita lang natin disadvantage with ambulatory BP is that it's relatively expensive. I think in most hospitals in Laguna, it costs around 3,500 at least to about 4,500 or 6,000. No? So expensive, and sometimes it can be uncomfortable for patients. So they report na yung sleep quality nila is disturbed, no? So you have to take that into account. Now, yung advantages naman ng home blood pressure monitoring, again, pareho sila ng ambulatory na it can identify white coat and mask. Pero this is cheap, mura lang. If you pay 4,500 for ambulatory BP for a single day, ito namang home monitoring, if you buy the blood pressure monitor, let's say for example, yung mga validated blood pressure monitors sell for about 3,500, no? That's about 10 pesos a day kung 1 year mo gagamitin. And if you divide that into 5 years, yung useful life ng digital blood pressure, as they say, is 5 years, that's about 2 pesos a day, 2 pesos lang. Diba? So very cheap, widely available, but make sure it's validated, no? Marami sa Shopee fake. Measurements at home, which may be more relaxed, and then it engages patient. Ito ang pinaka-advantage ng home blood pressure monitoring. It engages the patient and empowers them. They feel that they have a part in their own management. So they bring the record to the doctor's clinic, no, and then they are able to take part in their management. Easily repeated, used over longer periods of time. Sabi ko nga, if it lasts for 2 to 3 years, then 2 to 3 years, nagagamit mo yung blood pressure. Ang disadvantage ng home, only static BP, potential for measurement error kasi improper technique or unvalidated or poorly calibrated device. And again, nocturnal readings are not possible. However, meron ng bagong mga devices attached to the wrist nga lang that can measure your night BP, yung Night View by Omron. So in the future, once the validate, then we can use that in place of ambulatory BP. Now we go to the third part, initiation and adjustment of therapy. This is guideline-based and taking into account patient-specific factors. So based doon sa guidelines ng clinical practice guidelines ng Philippines, you have non-pharmacologic approaches like weight reduction, DASH eating plan, dietary sodium restriction, physical activity, moderation in alcohol consumption, and of course, avoidance of smoking. So as you can see, the most number of reduction will be found with weight reduction and DASH eating plan. Pay attention yung sa dietary sodium, 2 grams sodium, about 1 teaspoon salt, or 2 grams or 6 or 5 to 6 grams of sodium chloride, 1 teaspoon salt. If you eat instant noodles, that's about the daily limit, no, of 2 grams. Now, we also do risk factor counting for for Philippine clinical practice guidelines. When you look at risk factor stratification, patients with established cardiovascular disease like CAD, heart failure, stroke, peripheral vascular disease, atrial fibrillation, or those with hypertension-mediated organ damage like LVH, CKD, or any other available measure, instantly, no, you can start treatment in these patients because they are classified as high risk. With regard to traditional risk factors, any 2 to 3 risk factors will confer a high risk to your patient, such that if patient's advanced age and male, then you start treatment, no? So advanced age, male gender, overweight or obesity, diabetes, high LDL, family history of early CVD, hypertension, early onset menopause, smoking, psychosocial or socioeconomic factors. So this is what we recommend at present, but watch out for Raymond's, again, Raymond Olivas and et al. They are developing a risk factor calculator for the Filipino people. So just as an example, no, these are your cardiovascular risk calculators. Americans, they have this online, but this is only for primary prevention, no? So wala pang ASCVD. So risk estimator plus. While Europeans, they use these score charts, no? So i-graph mo yung systolic blood pressure, age ng patient, cholesterol level, smoking, etc. So score charts, and meron silang high risk, low risk, moderate risk charts. And again, this is not applicable to us. That's why we do risk factor counting. Now we go to pharmacologic treatment. What are the first line drugs? So we say preferred drugs for treatment of hypertension for uncomplicated. No, the first line drugs actually are ACE inhibitors or ARBs. Second is your calcium channel blockers, and third is your thiazide-like diuretics. So ideally, we combine. You use a RAS blocker plus CCB, RAS blocker plus diuretic, calcium blocker plus diuretic, etc. What we don't recommend is to combine two RAS blockers, your ACE and ARBs, no? And then look at the yellow portion, no? Usually in foreign guidelines, they recommend single pill combination therapy, meaning to say a single tablet containing 2 to 3 antihypertensive drugs. And this is to reduce the pill burden, no? So improve adherence and compliance and to reduce the pill burden. However, in the Philippines, the Philippines is a third world country, you know, so sometimes the single pill combination drugs are not available or might not be affordable for most patients. So we can use free combinations. So two to three tablets. Just make sure to educate the patient and tell them that they have to take all the drugs. Beta blockers, no? Before, kasama siya sa first-line drugs, but at any time, you can add beta blockers if there's indication like coronary artery disease, heart failure, arrhythmias, acute coronary syndrome, patients with high sympathetic drive, females who are desirous of pregnancy, and pregnant women. This is the algorithm that we have. So ang first line talaga, when you see a patient with elevation of blood pressure, is to do lifestyle change, low salt diet, weight loss, exercise, smoking cessation, alcohol in abstinence. And then you evaluate the patient. Is there presence of HMOD? Is there CVD disease or risk equivalent? If none, then you can do lifestyle, and BP targets are achieved, continue with lifestyle. However, if there's the presence of HMOD and CVD disease, you can choose drugs, and then after 3 months, controlled. If not, do additional, you can add a second agent from the first line drugs and so on and so forth. Now, the ISH 2020 guideline, I will just show this to you, but we'll look at the next slide, the ESC 2024. There's a slight difference, no? The ISH 2020 guidelines recommend the use of dual low dose combination for step 1. So that's an ARB or ACE inhibitor plus a calcium channel blocker. For step 2, if uncontrolled, dual full dose combination. So a higher dose of your ARB, ACE or ARB plus a calcium channel blocker. And step 3, add a diuretic. So that's triple combination using maximum doses of your ACE, ARB, and calcium blockers, plus a long-acting diuretic, which unfortunately in the Philippines, we only have indapamide, no? Which is expensive, about 40 pesos. Trials in other countries use chlortalidone, which is very cheap. We don't have that here. We only have hydrochlorothiazide, which is relatively shorter acting than your indapamide. Cheap, pero you have to give for 2 to 3 times. And then step 4, when you do triple combination plus spironolactone, if still uncontrolled, but you try to check if it's resistant hypertension versus secondary hypertension. When you say resistant, the definition of resistant hypertension is you're already receiving maximum doses of your ACE, ARB plus calcium blockers plus a diuretic or maximally tolerated. So, kung ilan lang matotolerate. So, dapat maximum before adding spironolactone and before saying that it's resistant hypertension. You also have to rule out pseudo-resistant hypertension. No, most common cause, poor compliance, patients not taking all the drugs. No? Lifestyle, hindi nagbabago ng lifestyle, diet, lack of exercise, obesity, etc., etc. So ito yung ESC guidelines, no? Sa ESC guidelines, if you notice here sa arrow, low dose double combination. So ACE, ARB, calcium blocker. So dalawa lang. And then next step, you make it triple. So ACE, ARB plus CCB plus diuretic. Low dose. And then pag hindi pa rin controlled, maximally tolerated triple combination ACE, ARB plus a diuretic plus calcium blocker. And then if still uncontrolled, that's called resistant hypertension na kasi you're using maximum doses including a diuretic. So you can either refer the patient to a hypertension clinic, test for adherence, and add spironolactone. So these are the various drugs, na we say first-line drugs. No, for those in the audience who are not adept at the various drug classes, when you say ACE inhibitors, these are the ones that end in pril. No, so captopril, enalapril, benacepril, cilazapril. Okay, captopril. Now, angiotensin receptor blockers end in sartan, losartan, valsartan, candesartan, eprosartan, olmesartan. Calcium blockers, they have different fathers. Iba-iba sila eh. So may verapamil, may diltiazem, and then merong amlodipine, yung prototype, nifedipine, amlodipine, felodipine. So yun yung calcium blockers. And then diuretics, you have yung, sabi natin long-acting, chlortalidone, indapamide. Indapamide is the only one available na long-acting here in the Philippines, no? Okay, and then you have your HCTZ, hydrochlorothiazide, which are shorter acting. And then yung beta blockers, sabi natin, with other indications, they end in olol. Metoprolol, propranolol, atenolol, bisoprolol, carvedilol. Okay? So these are the various drugs that we use first line. Of course, we have second line drugs. So now we go to the exciting part, no, in thresholds and targets. Ito yung specific recommendations for patients, ano yung specific, kung may mga comorbidities na very common. So for general population recommendation for Filipinos 18 years old and above, the threshold for treatment is 140/90 and above. So kung 140/90 lang but patient is high risk, example, post-stroke, na-stroke siya 3 months ago and then came to your clinic na ganyan ng blood pressure, you start treatment and the target blood pressure is about 130/80. Okay, now these numbers, no, we're saying this now, but in light of the American guidelines and the European Society guidelines na binababa na rin nila yung thresholds, baka later we will be seeing lower target levels, no? Elderly individuals, mas higher ang threshold, 150/90, and yung target level is about 140/90. We have to watch out for orthostatic hypotension in these individuals. Magkaroon ng dizziness. Sometimes they complain of low BAT sila. They are very weak, no? And you check the blood pressure. You do orthostatic maneuvers, yung tinuro kanina early on, to check if there's lowering of blood pressure when they stand up from a sitting or a supine position. Diabetes, 140/90 and above on threshold for treatment and target should be less than 130/80, but not below 120/70. There's no added benefit. Chronic kidney disease, ang threshold for treatment is 140/90, but individualized ang targets, no, specialist required, as low as, if tolerated, 120/70. In acute ischemic stroke, medyo komplikado. Dr. Bimbo should be here, no? He's our neurologist. For those who are going to receive IV thrombolysis, the blood pressure should be less than 185/110 before and during thrombolysis. So patients with 220/120 blood pressure should be lowered down to 185/110. Those who are not eligible for IV thrombolysis, the usual run-of-the-mill strokes that we see in the ICU, threshold is 220/120. We actually compute for the mean arterial pressure, but sometimes it is, for practical purposes, I compute, this is about 160/90 to 180/100. So this is what we call a permissive hypertension. Magaling mag-discuss nito sila Dr. Bimbo, sila Dr. Chua. So we reduce the blood pressure by about 15% only in the first 24 hours. For those with acute intracerebral hemorrhage, threshold is 180 and above. Target is less than 180, but not lower than 140. So BP lowering, systolic of between 140 to 160. And then as I said in my earlier example, in a patient with a past history of stroke and the patient presents to you 140/90, baka sabihin nyo 140/90 lang yan, okay pa yan kasi first stage pa lang bago pa lang hypertension, mag-diet ka muna and come back after 3 months. No, with patients with a past history of stroke na hindi nakapagpagamot and then comes to you to the clinic for the first time, the blood pressure is 140/90, you treat the patient because the blood pressure target is about less than or equal to 138. Now, we come to the last slide, no? When you see patients, no, sabi natin we should monitor accurately for correct diagnosis. We choose the drugs we give, make sure that the patient's compliant, etc. And still you have uncontrolled hypertension. Ano yung mga reasons for this, no? Lack of access, no? Sa Filipinos, we still have a lot of Filipinos who are not able to see a healthcare professional before dying, no, because of lack of access. Advanced age, obesity are more susceptible to hypertension, non-compliance with therapy, knowledge deficits, no? You educate your patients because hindi nila alam. Hypertension is a silent disease. We call it the silent killer. Diba? So, dapat alam nila because marami sa pasyente, they don't know na dapat alam nila, dapat may maramdaman sila. Yung cost ng gamot sa isa hindrance, no, medyo bahal. That's why a lot of our patients depend on our barangays and they are being given amlodipine, losartan, among others, no? So yun lang ang binibigay sa kanila. And then complicated regimens, no? Don't make it complicated, especially in elderly individuals. They cannot remember when or what to take, no? At what time, at what. So very simple na, umaga and gabi, no? And then yung side effects sometimes will be a hindrance to patients taking medications regularly because nahihilo or inuubo, in the case of ACE inhibitors, inuubo, or mga erectile dysfunction, okay? Or in patients receiving diuretics, we are in a tropical country, nagda-dry yung skin, makate, okay? So yung side effects, poor physician-patient communication. Commonly, hindi natin na-address yung knowledge ng pasyente, hindi natin nabigyan ng proper advice. Okay, that's why patients stop taking their medication. Lack of social support, and nandito yung resistant hypertension, and there's such a thing as pseudo-resistant nga, sabi ko, poor compliance, poor adherence, obese individuals, etc. Sa physician factors, ang pinaka-glaring dito is lack of knowledge about the guidelines. That's why, sabi ni Dr. Bimbo, our president, ang advocacy namin actually is to really spread the news about hypertension. No? We want to lower the prevalence of hypertension in the future. So yung guidelines, sabi natin, keep it simple. Ano ba yung definition ng hypertension? Ano ba yung threshold for treatment? Ano ba yung target? Okay? Sometimes, itong isa, yung use of monotherapy is being advocated now by the guidelines, no? Because most of the time, the most common most common cause is use of monotherapy of uncontrolled hypertension. Ang recommendation right now is to give low dose two drugs, no, single pill combination or free combination, free drugs using two different mechanisms, no. What else? Concern, belief that and then this one, reluctance to treat. There are some doctors who are reluctant to treat, no, kasi yun nga, parang hindi mo naman, wala naman nararamdaman eh, might as well, ano. So this has been, this was seen, no, this was done in the US actually. So this was seen in their electronic medical records. When they viewed the medical records, they found out that patients had hypertension, and yet it was not reflected in the diagnosis, no, mainly because it was asymptomatic. And lastly, lack of time at office visits. Nagmamadali tayo eh, no. So how do we address this, no? Hindi natin ma-educate yung pasyente, hindi natin masabihan, ma-educate mabuti, mabigyan ng information what to do. So ang ginawa namin, naisipan namin dati, like Denver here, meron tayo sa Facebook Live, and perhaps makakarating tayo sa laypersons, no? At maririnig nila to, and then they'll know na ganun pala yung problem of hypertension. Multimedia, pwedeng comics. We had before we came out with comics na pinamimigay namin. That was an idea the idea was first brought out by Dr. Abelardo, no, and then we tried to add, pero walang budget masyado eh, no. So anyway, comics, infographics, no. Outside the clinics, we can put posters, no, telling the patients na sa amin here in Southern Luzon, we have a poster saying dapat lahat, no. You have to check your blood pressure, take your medications as prescribed, do diet, exercise, etc., and follow your doctor, di ba? So these are all causes of uncontrolled hypertension. So in summary, take-home message: accurate measurement, correct diagnosis, opportunistic screening for all, regardless of chief complaint. We advocate the use of out of office to confirm the office blood pressure. Home blood pressure improves adherence. It empowers the patients. Okay? Making a BP diary, no? Talagang that makes the patients feel that they are part of the management of their disease, because they bring this diary on follow-up and ipapakita nila sa doctor, and makikita natin yung pattern, no? Hindi lang kwento. Dapat nakikita, no? Risk factor counting for now, but watch out for the risk calculator for Filipinos. Okay? We need proper and logical medicine combination to achieve goal, which is to control the blood pressure. Lastly, no, we need to overcome clinical inertia. When you say inertia, sabi natin, you know what to do, pero hindi mo ginagawa. So sa patient inertia, dapat alam niyang inumin niya yung gamot, hindi niya iniinom. Sa doctor naman, dapat igamutin mo, hindi mo ginagamot, or you impart knowledge to the patient to make them aware na na kailangan inumin nila yung medications, pero hindi na. Or you know na dapat hindi na monotherapy, dual drugs na para ma-achieve mo yung target blood pressure, hindi mo ginagawa. Those are examples of clinical inertia, and we have to overcome that. We educate, we communicate with our patients, take time to talk to patients, and use other mediums. Sabi ko kanina, infographics, posters, comics, multimedia. Social media, you can use Facebook page, very useful for us, no? Tuturo mo lang, but pupunta ka sa Facebook page namin, Facebook page ng Philippine Society of Hypertension, and tingnan mo yung mga ginagawa namin doon. You will learn, okay? So I think that's the last, and then lastly, read the guidelines and use the guidelines, no? Define, treat, achieve target. And keyword is to simplify. Simplify natin buhay natin para madali nating gawin yung dapat, no? So I think that's the last slide. I'd like to thank you for your attention to all the, I think we have nurses in the audience, no? So happy Nurses Week to everyone. This is Dr. Mina. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Sir Arnold, for that very comprehensive lecture, no? Yeah, I think the topic has felt very well discussed by Dr. Mina, and buti na lang wala tayong industry sponsored activity. So we have more time for the actual
Oo.
CME
Oo nga, oo
lecture.
nga.
So ang ganda, na-cover po natin, no, on how to assess, diagnose from the office to the and how do we address, no, and manage hypertension in the office-based setting. We have several questions lang, both from the Facebook Live and of course here's a Zoom, no. Let me first ask dito, no. One of the questions asked here is in the Q&A, sir, advisable po ba sa inpatient may hypertension and to wear anti-embolic stockings?
Anti-embolic stocks, actually depende Denver sa clinical situation, no? Usually yung anti-embolic stockings we use for patients that we expect na mag-immobilize siya for a certain period, a longer
Yes.
period of time.
Okay.
In hospitalized patients na ambulatory, not necessarily. Pero yung mga patients who are post-op, for example, tas matagal siyang naka-immobilized, then pwede, you can do that.
Very agree, sir. No, actually, irrespective of whether the patient has hypertension or not,
Uh,
the anti-embolic stockings, we usually use it as a support for anticoagulation to prevent risk for venous thromboembolism. We're talking about inpatient, no? For outpatient, usually we recommend it to be used kapag may mga chronic venous insufficiency. So basically, sometimes yung may chronic hypertension, minsan talaga nag-aggravate din yung venous pressure niya, nagkakaroon ng varicosities, no? So, doon namin siya rin-recommend talagang magsuot ng anti-embolic stockings. Another question here, sir. What would be the routine blood pressure for an adult working at 8 p.m. to 6 a.m.? A very good question.
8 p.m. to 6 p.m. So
8 p.m. to, sir, to 6 a.m. Night
6
shift to,
a.m.
shift
So night
worker.
shift siya.
Shift worker, yes, yes.
Night shift, ang difference, iniisip mo yung meron siyang diurnal, ano?
Yes, pattern
Diurnal
wise.
dapat. Pero remember, pagka nagna-night shift ka, nawawala yung diurnal rhythm mo eh. So kung minsan, yun nga ang problema sa mga patient, sa mga naka-night shift na workers, hindi nila hindi nasusunod yung diurnal rhythm. So ang tanong, ano yung ideal blood pressure? Well,
Kailan sila magme-measure, sir? Kailan magme-measure?
kailan magme-measure? O nga, no? Good question. Morning and evening ang usual, pero they can check it anytime siguro kung naka-night shift sila.
Mhm.
Sometimes you expect that the blood pressure at work will be higher, medyo stressed out sa work eh, what you call job strain. Ikaw,
Mhm.
ano mo, Denver?
Yeah, kumbaga meron eh kasi definitely that patient would
Oh.
sleep in the morning, no? Um, ang recommendation ko personally for this is to just as it advise them. For example, magsa-start siya ng araw niya 8 p.m. He can monitor the blood pressure 7 p.m. before the work and then consistently measure it as long as you take the blood pressure based on what is recommended as discussed by Dr. Arnold, no? Proper way to take, hindi kumain, well rested, tapos haven't smoked for any purposes, doon tayo pwede mag-measure. Basta record it, we get the average, and then we'll be able to see the monitoring ng BP. Yeah.
Sinagot mo yan, Denver, nung ano mo eh, nung last episode, yung siguro kasunod ng question niya, when is the best time to take
Yeah.
medication kung naka-night shift ka,
Yes.
ba? So,
There's
there's,
actually a follow-up question for this. When
uh,
is the best time to take medication? Kasi nakatanong din to sa Facebook Live. When losartan tsaka amlodipine, one common practice is very good question, losartan in the morning, amlodipine at night. So, sir, before before I give my comments, baka may sagot ka for that.
yung ano, usually ang common reasoning is that since pag tinignan mo dun sa ano yung time study yun eh, di ba?
Yes, yes.
Say na if you use long-acting drugs that are
Wala
sufficient
siyang
to
pinalaman.
overlap, walang difference yung time of day that you take for as long as you remember to take the medication.
I
However,
agree.
may mga ibang recommendations, Denver, na you take one in the morning or split time dosing to to parang yung especially in patients with reverse deeper, yung
Yes,
may
yes.
nighttime hypertension, they say na it's better to say, pero hindi ko nakita yung ano, yung mismong
Trial.
source, eh.
Yeah.
Trial eh. Baka ikaw meron kang ano.
So, ayun, if you're talking about long-acting antihypertensives, no, when we say long-acting, it's your amlodipine with a 48-hour half-life, your telmisartan with a 24-hour half-life. Time when you take these medications really doesn't matter as long as you consistently take them. Based on the time study and the BedMed study, which are trials to take a look on the outcomes of patients when you take the medications morning or at night. The studies have shown no significant difference in terms of adverse cardiovascular events and in terms of BP control. This is not true for patients who are taking short-acting medications such as losartan, the captopril, no, because these medications have short acting effect. Actually, we are for those patients, for those of you who are taking or who are still using losartan in your practices, we recommend it to give it at least twice daily, no, 50 BID, or if you are in the 50, half tab BID. Kasi the half-life of losartan is around 4 to 6 hours. Then just to answer one question para lang masagot na natin, sir. Again, most guidelines are recommending single pill combination therapy. So it doesn't matter when you combine it, no? For example, you're giving losartan amlodipine, you can advise your patients to take them simultaneously.
Okay.
Ito sir, yung kaibigan natin, si Doc Art Pitarge,
Ano yung
may
tanong Art?
may question si Sir Doc Art. Thank you for the great lecture. Can you comment on the SPRINT trial and its applicability to the Filipino population? One of the underused risk factors, HMOD screening. Can you expound for the benefit of our younger doctors?
Naririnig ko yan dati kay Dr. Morales nung lumabas yung sprint trial. He kept on saying na dapat i-adapt natin sa hospitals yung AOBPM, Automated Office Blood Pressure Measurement, na unattended, no, which was used in sprint trial. Actually, ito yung basis nung sa American guidelines, di ba? Kaya ang mas mababa yung blood pressures na nakukuha nila. So sinasabi ni Sir dati na yung tawag dito, yung blood pressure, we should provide a room in the hospital to check, no, automated. So walang nurse or walang doktor, just the patient, tas i-press niya yung blood pressure monitor and then i-check yung BP. Yun ang gusto niya mangyari, no? Ano yung question ni
SPRINT trial, sir.
Sprint? Oo nga,
Yeah,
yung
actually,
Edmond,
Doc Art, sorry, Sir Arnold, I
sige.
delivered recently a lecture on the comment on the sprint and step trial, which are actually the lower thresholds, no, for blood pressure. Siguro, Doc Art, the more applicable in the Asian population is the step trial, which compared standard BP monitoring, a BP of targeting less than 140/90, and the step, which is less than 130/80. Compared sa sprint
Sa
kasi, sir,
Sprint,
less than
120 eh.
120. Oo.
120.
Ang problem kasi dun sa sprint, sir, although maganda yung clinical benefit, that is why it was stopped prematurely in
Mm.
3.8 years. However, if you're going to look at the adverse events, medyo mataas din. So,
Oo.
yun yung worry natin. So, however, the step trial, which actually included adult elderly patients around 60 to 80 years old, lesser side effects but better outcome. So, if we target BP less than 130/80, and I think this is one of the landmark trials, no, that made the ESC target the BP 120 to 120 and over less than 80 as the optimal BP target. Again, guidelines are kumbaga, neutral in terms of, for example, for elderly, those who have multiple comorbidities, na pag hindi ma-tolerate yung optimal BP target, we have the
Oo.
ALARA principle, as low as reasonably achievable. So, if hindi natin kaya, wag natin pilitin yung 120 to 120 and over less than 80. We go for the less than 140/90. Or again, even for some, less than 150. Kung talagang, again, as doctors, first do no harm tayo.
Oo.
As physicians, as healthcare providers, first do no harm tayo dito.
Tama.
So,
Tama.
yun. Siguro, sir, we can entertain 2 more questions, ano. Yun lang, just to in contact, pag naka-maintain, normal, No, you have to continue medications. You don't stop medications. The ESC guidelines tell us when to reduce the dose kapag yung BP nagle-less than 110. But if 110 to 120, again, it's still okay to continue the medication. You only consider decreasing the dose or kung mababa na yung dose kapag less than 100, less than 110, majority ng BP monitoring. Ito sir, para sa'yo. For patients without their own BP apparatus at home, can I advise them to visit their local health center to get their BPs taken and approach this as home BP measurements? Meaning, can I
Ah,
ask them to do home BP 7 consecutive days, 2 BP takings with 1 minute interval?
so sa
As if
local
they
health
are at home.
center, that's
Yes.
okay for as long as wala, hindi when you do a recommendation, dapat meron ka ring facility for doing that. Kung yung ibang pasyente, they cannot buy their own blood pressure monitor. So we allow them, we tell them you can have it done in the local health center for as long as they follow the standard, no? Dapat makapahinga ka 5 minutes kasi pagdating mo sa center, nagchachismisan yan, daldalan yan, dinadaldal ka. So you educate them, you tell them dapat 5 minutes quiet, rested ka, and then check the blood pressure. Actually, ginawa namin yan dito nung sa May Measurement Month Denver. May parang ina-adapt kami mga local health centers. Binibigay namin yung digital blood pressure
Okay.
para doon namin pinapupunta yung pasyente.
Agree with that,
Oo.
no? Well, the thing is, sabi nga ni Doc Arnold, yung opportunistic screening, the best way to measure still, no, magkaroon tayo ng measurement, so we'll have a baseline for these patients na
So,
kailangan nating ma-monitor. Kasi nga, again, ang problem sa Pilipinas, we are an archipelago, very difficult to really get the data locally, and again, in different big islands and of course several islands pa. Alright. Okay. Ito sir, may hypertensive urgency. We'll have a discussion, a separate cyber summit on acute elevated blood pressure by Dr. Oliva. We recently published, wait for it, will be available soon, no, on the Philippine guidelines on acute severe elevated BP. But to answer those patients question on Facebook Live, do we really have to lower BP immediately for patients in the OPD with hypertensive urgency? The answer is no. Again, you can target normotension in 48 to 72 hours. Actually, in the guidelines, normotension to be targeted for newly diagnosed hypertension, you should target it in 6 months, to be honest. So gradual BP lowering talaga siya, unless sobrang taas talaga, 180 and everything, no? Again, we are shying away from the hypertensive urgency. The ones that we need to treat and decrease BP emergently is hypertensive emergency. So, yun. May mga questions pa ba tayo? Last one question. Siguro sir, ito yung may sagot, may magandang question eh. Sorry in the interest of time, you can ask these questions in the Facebook of Philippine Society of Hypertension. Dr. Arnold and I will try to answer them for you. But just one last question. Again, somebody mentioned BP variability. We'll also have a cyber summit on discussing BP variability. But the question is, are there going to be innovatives on how to address BP variability?
BP variability in terms of yung
Yes.
gamot or measuring or diagnosing.
Diagnosing, sir. Kumbaga,
Yung
how?
best at present, ang best natin is yung 24-hour ambulatory blood
Yes,
pressure
agree.
monitor. But if you look at the writing on the wall, nasa digital age na tayo ng hypertension eh. So perhaps in the future, yung mga wearables, pero hindi pa validated, Denver, yung mga cuffless, kasi may cuff
Yes.
ito eh, di ba? Nag-inflate.
Yes.
Yung wearable ngayon, merong cuff wearable, merong cuffless wearable. So mas less mas less hassle sa pasyente. Pero hindi pa sila validated eh. So ang development ngayon is actually tinatry nila to determine how to validate these wearables, no? So ang pinaka-closest ngayon is 24-hour BP monitor. Tama?
Yes, agree. Yeah, the best is actually the 24-hour EBP kasi it give us 30-minute to 1 hour BP measurement. But that alone, that as well, parang when we attend our international and local conventions, that's still too far away. We want really the minute to minute, second to second variability. And that
Oo.
can be achieved by yung parang yung ginagamit natin sa pulse oximeter, the apply ito seismograph as well. But again, in the advent of AI integrating into medicine, we can correct those factors that makes it that would try to make it as accurate as possible.
Oh,
The best really, if you really want to monitor BP variability, yung pinaka gold standard for me, I'm an interventional cardiologist, is when
oh,
we insert an arterial line.
oh,
Yung po
tama,
talaga
tama.
yung may nakalagay na pressure introducer sa artery. Yon every second na may
Kita
measure
mo yung
natin yung BP ng patient. But that's, again, but that is too invasive just to measure BP variability. Of course, you want the lesser invasive to address
Ang,
that.
ang next na question doon, Denver, given the BP variable, halimbawa, all the data about BP variability, kung meron tayong mga wearables, ang next question is, how do we deal with that? No? Paano mo
Yes.
i-treat yun? So,
Kasi
parang,
ayaw natin, Doc, ng ano ng very wide yung BP variability, one
oo,
into
yung wide.
consistent.
Yung
So
wild, yung
maybe,
swings yun. Oh.
yes, again, in one of the summits, and of course in the local convention, the advocacy is to really use long-acting medications with
Oo.
sustained blood pressure lowering effect, no? And we have lots of medications in our armamentarium, and that is the reason why I think marami po sa mga guidelines are I think that is the reason why there's a move from the ESC to use different molecules to address BP. Addressing different pathways can
Mm.
decrease BP variability. Again, meron po tayong tinatawag na ano dyan RAAS, or parang yung RAAS breakthrough. We're blocking the ACE, we're blocking the ARB, but there's a breakthrough. I think even naka-maintenance kayo ng ACE or ARB plus a calcium channel blocker, nag-hypertensive urgency, just to use the term, na tumataas yung BP. I think these are the type of patients na nagkakaroon tayo ng breakthrough. Kumbaga, nagkakaroon na tayo ng bypass mechanism to that problem. And kaya nagkakaroon tayo ng bagong gamot na lalabas, and hopefully by, ano pa daw sir to, 2027 lalabas. We
Kasabay.
have the ASI.
Mm.
So, ASI, it's an aldosterone something inhibitor. So, para siyang ACE pero dun siya sa MRA part.
Oo.
Anyway, lots of exciting the hypertension kasi again, it's still the number one risk factor for
Oo.
cardiovascular disease. Again, sir, in the interest of time,
Yeah.
ang sarap pa tayo pag-usapan ng hypertension. And it's always
Tama.
a pleasure discussing it with you, no? Ang sarap, parang usapang nagiinuman lang.
Kapian.
Anyway, sir, any final words before I close the session?
Uh, well, kung if you listen to the topic, no, talagang kailangan accurate measurement for correct diagnosis. Kasi first step is actually to be able to make the correct diagnosis. Too often we see patients being given medications na hindi pa naman dapat. Babalik sa'yo, pupunta sa'yo, hilong-hilo yung pasyente. So yun ang first step. Number two, to increase awareness of hypertension, dapat we check the blood pressure talaga. So yung spread mo yung word, Denver, yung MMM.
Yes.
No, di ba?
Yeah,
Parang
may measurement, ma'am.
increase awareness.
If your company would want to participate, send a message to us. Hindi po kailangan hospital, hindi kailangan clinic. Pwede po company nyo mag-participate sa MMM. Next year, May, please send us a message and we'll post it constantly in our Facebook page. All
Okay.
right. Thank you, Sir Arnold. Again, for this session of the Cyber Summit, we're able to learn how to appropriately diagnose hypertension in the office-based setting. And we were also given how to verify this with home BP monitoring, ambulatory blood pressure monitoring. And we were given a walkthrough on the most recent published guidelines, and of course, our very own. Takilikin natin sa sarili natin ang local Philippine guidelines on the management of hypertension. Maraming salamat po, Sir Arnold, sa pagpaunyak ng aming imbitasyon para po dito sa Cyber Summit, and I hope di kayo magsasawa and sana bumalik po kayo sa board soon. In any case, for our audience, we'll have a podcast naman on top of Cyber Summit. It will
Thank you sa
be
tiwala mo.
hosted by Dr. Diaz and Dr. Atilano. Ito, this will complement our session tonight. What are the nuances? What are the myths and common errors and practices in blood pressure measurement? And of course, watch out for the third episode of our Cyber Summit. This will be aired probably in January next year. Topic to be posted in the Facebook page of Philippine Society of Hypertension. Again, our Cyber Summits are all CPD accredited for different professional organizations. Maraming salamat po.